If we care for classical music to not only survive, but thrive, it really must be inclusive.
There are a lot of people talking about how we can diversify and how we can include. The Sphinx is actually doing it.
In its 25th year, Sphinx has truly exceeded any of my wildest dreams. And I'm a pretty big dreamer. When I founded Sphinx 25 years ago, a lot of people thought we shouldn't try to build diversity in classical music. Thankfully, I never hear that anymore. And that's because of the extraordinary work and excellence that all of our Sphinx musicians bring to bear.
The most important lesson of Sphinx's founding was the creation of the family. Sphinx, from its very inception, was a very entrepreneurial organization, one that's been responsive to its constituents, to its artists.
Wow! Drop the mic. There are millions of kids like this in this country who do not have the resources to become everything that they could be. But fortunately, these programs are doing the job that the bigger society fails to do.
I really love teaching for the Overture program. It strengthens community to have arts programs.
Go on the E string.
I think it helps the children to develop confidence, their patience, their perseverance, their dedication, and I think just fun.
While it was launched with the idea of spotlighting and empowering young people of color who were playing classical music, it was quickly envisioned to be something bigger than that, because we saw a need for reinforcing a pipeline, for preparing young people, and also for creating a safe and a wonderful trajectory for these young artists so that they can see themselves on a professional stage in an executive office, making decisions and really shaping the future and the face of classical music.
The Sphinx Lead program is a 2-year program for aspiring arts administrators. The mentorship has been incredible, and I also have a wonderful network of cohorts. We spend a lot of time together to support each other and share opportunities.
I think the Sphinx organization is so incredibly important. It tries to achieve in our society an equilibrium of people who are incredibly talented and motivated to be part of every aspect of our society.
Sphinx really has become a movement of social change. I find myself now more optimistic about our future than I ever have been in the past.
The scale of our programs has grown tremendously. Just in the last year and a half, our audiences have increased by more than 100%. And by really understanding that we can only achieve artistic excellence if we are diverse and inclusive, we can really not only augment Sphinx's mission, but do wonders for our entire field.
Hello, I'm Darren Walker, president of the Ford Foundation, and I am delighted to congratulate Sphinx on 25 years and on the occasion of this magnificent convening to say thank you, not only to Sphinx the organization, but to all of you who do the work that you do as leaders in the performing arts, defining excellence in the arts in American culture. We are forever thankful on behalf of all of my colleagues at the Ford Foundation. I want to particularly congratulate the Sphinx Symphony and Exigence Vocal Ensemble on your performances in Ann Arbor and in Washington at the Kennedy Center. What an accomplishment, and how proud we all are of you. So thanks again, and here's to a great year ahead.
Good evening and welcome to SphinxConnect 2023 Impact. And what a joy it is to welcome so many of you live in person in our beloved city of Detroit. Yes, you can give yourselves a round of applause. First, I just want to acknowledge Amran and her absolutely exquisite performance, as it certainly sets the tone for the weekend of excellence for all of us, myself certainly included. Yes. I want to thank each of you for coming together to celebrate our artists and our leaders, and as well as the values that we all share as a community. Excellence in diversity, along with its impact, past, present, as well as the promise that it holds. These last several years, I think we can all agree, have been a different kind of an experience for most of us. There have been lessons in loss, love, humility, endurance, creativity, and hope. But no matter what our personal lessons, for most of us, the past several years have underscored the power of community and partnership. At Sphinx, we have found ourselves recognizing the richness in the gift of togetherness and leaning while learning from one another. As we reach the final days of celebrating 25 years of Sphinx's programming, we reflect on more than 350 partners who have helped us reach more than 66 million people through digital and live programming, and award more than $10 million in artist grants and scholarships. We reflect on the nearly 120 musicians placed in American orchestras in just the last 4 years alone, and more than 1,000 of our extraordinary alumni around the world who are defining the very meaning of excellence in our entire field today. This year's reunion here at SphinxConnect was themed Impact on purpose. One of the primary definitions of the word is forcible contact between one object and another. I want you to think about it, not the poetic stuff we say about impact. Forcible contact between one object and another. One could say elements outside of our power met with our mission with, yes, force, determination, intention, all for greater meaning. Today, we don't just reflect on our impact thus far, we draw lessons together that help carry all of us forward. We can mark this very moment to envision our future impact. How do we look ahead and plan forward for a more significant, systemic, forcible encounter? What will be the right ratio of effort to circumstance? What do each of us need to do in order to have not one, but 10 concerts in our entire season reflect all of the different vibrant voices in our programs? How do we distribute our resources to make sure that there's never another no-hire situation in our orchestra? Knowing that at Sphinx alone, we have so many prepared, talented musicians that instead of one orchestra, we had to assemble 3 this season alone. So there can't be any more no-hires. You know, our founder, Aaron Dworkin, who's here with us today, he used to tell us that success doesn't arrive on our doorsteps. It needs to be carefully architected. So I ask, how will you help us architect or engineer, if you will, a future where the next CEO search for a major institution, and I repeat, major institution, yields a pool of candidates that gives a black or a brown leader a true and a fair shot at being selected and leading? Yes, please. And maybe it starts with someone saying something when it feels uncomfortable or goes against consensus or the grain. As you can see, I don't have a lot of answers today, but I have questions. And I'm hoping that by posing the right questions, we can together arrive at a plan. And that's my main point. Don't walk out of here this year without a plan. The ground has never been so fertile and ripe. The environment has never been this ready and receptive. So I ask for 2 things of you. Remember the true definition of impact and the force and the forethought, as well as the action that is necessary for objects or ideas to collide. And number 2, before you depart after the finals concert on Saturday at 7:30, or hopefully after the UMS concert on Sunday at 2 p.m., that I know all of you are joining, but before you leave SphinxConnect 2023, I urge you to draft a 1-sentence personal statement of impact. Just one simple statement of the type of impact you will personally create, enact, engineer, architect, however you wish, and how specifically you plan to achieve it. Without a plan, a vision is just a dream, fleeting and brief. So let's make each of ours an exception. Think about it, there are more than 1,000 of us here. We would have 1,000 exceptions, an example of commitment and promise to today's artists and those of tomorrow. So let me say a few words about one of our plenary guests at the moment. This visionary artist made her debut at the Metropolitan Opera in 1995, before Sphinx was born. She has appeared triumphantly at many opera houses around the world with an extensive repertoire and her signature title roles of Carmen and Samson and Delilah. She has made many appearances in children's television series Between the Lions, where she used her talents to teach children sounds of words. From presidential inaugurations to the Washington National Cathedral in remembrance of those fallen on 9/11, to the Supreme Court ceremony honoring the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, XM satellite radio as well as the Vox, this gifted artist has been heard on many stages, both live and virtual, around the world. In 2013, she sang in the world premiere of Terence Blanchard's and Michael Christopher's boxing opera, Champion, with the Opera Theater of St. Louis. In addition to gracing audiences with her exceptional voice, she lends it also in support of emerging singers through her own Denyce Graves Foundation. Tonight, she's joined by an award-winning multi-genre artist, composer, pianist, conductor, educator extraordinaire, and a recipient of Sphinx's highest honor, the Sphinx Medal of Excellence. It is now my honor to introduce tonight's plenary artists, the legendary Denyce Graves-Montgomery and Damien Sneed.
Thank you so very much for that very warm reception. I wish I had you guys with me everywhere I went. That was really wonderful. Tonight, Maestro Damien Sneed and I are indeed honored, and it is a great pleasure for us to join you here for this SphinxConnect event. We'd like to perform a piece that is not very well known, but a great piece that, the great Marian Anderson sang quite a lot. And many years ago, the first time that I met George Shirley, he said to me, Denyce, there's a piece that I really want you to look at. And maybe about 15 years went by, and every time I saw him, he said, I want to send you this piece, I want to send you this piece. Anyhow, he finally sent it to me, and it's called Poor Me. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Trouble will bury me down, yet still my soul feels heavenly bound.
So Mrs. Denyce Graves-Montgomery, welcome to the Sphinx family. Welcome to SphinxConnect 2023. Afa Dworkin spoke of the focal word, the theme impact, and you truly are a force to be reckoned with. You have an alluring career, you're a beauty personified, and you are the quintessential example, I believe, for every creative savant and artist in this space. For me personally, going to Howard University in the 90s, the late 90s, hearing your name all over the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, what does it feel like being in this space now and the idea of relevance for creatives?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm going to forgive you for rubbing in the 90s part. That aged me like instantaneously. I am always profoundly grateful to have the opportunity to do what it is that we love to do, that we all love to do, to be able to express and to share and to connect our hearts with the audience. My career has had many different incarnations, and as I've spent 40 years on the stage as a storyteller, my focus is now shifted to telling other stories, those stories of those great Americans who have been intentionally left out of the telling of the American narrative. So I consider it an honor to be here, to be able to see some familiar faces and to meet a lot of new people, and that we're all here in good health. We've all survived something amazing, and to have the opportunity to be in person again and to share differently and to tell those different stories. So what I feel like at this very moment is a tremendous amount of gratitude to just be here and look at all these beautiful faces and have the opportunity to share some of the things that are important and those things that have lifted me up throughout the whole of my career. And I really do feel a great responsibility or duty to be able to share that back with the next up and coming emerging generation of young artists. So it's an honor.
You studied at the Oberlin Conservatory, also New England Conservatory, and you've been a part of the faculty of Peabody, was Conservatory, now Institute, and now you're on the faculty at the Juilliard School in New York City. You talked about sharing. I'd like you to discuss with everyone a little bit of your methodology of using your platform for activism, particularly with the Denyce Graves Foundation. I get a chance to work with you and so many other great people with the DEI initiative of the Denyce Graves Foundation, which launched at Howard University, my alma mater, on September 30th, 2022. And that's called Shared Voices. Can you talk to us about Shared Voices and how you're using your platforms, your resources, the doors, the avenues that you have been able to create from your career for such a long-standing career?
So there were a lot of things that you said there. There's a lot to address. I did go to Oberlin College, but I ended up getting my degree from New England Conservatory. Oberlin College at that time had a mandatory age retirement, and my voice teacher had been a draw for the conservatory, but they had been enforcing that for other professors, and she was sort of a mysterious unknown age. But because she was this real calling card for the conservatory, they said you can't enforce that for some of the professors and not for others. So there were about 14 of us who left the conservatory and went to follow her at New England Conservatory. But I loved both institutions, so there's that. That's important to say because She was very much from the old school of teaching, and from the philosophy of each one teach one. So she never let us as undergraduates, as freshmen, practice on our own. She always assigned an upperclassman to go into the to go into the practice studio with you to make sure that you were practicing correctly and having a look at your technique. What that did was that created a really discerning ear for all of us, because when we got to be juniors and seniors, we had to do the same thing for the underclassmen. So she was not only giving us very fine instruction, she was a master voice builder, but she was also teaching us to learn how to teach. So that was important, that stage that happened there. For those who happen to be, who perhaps may be teachers or maybe parents, I think we've had that experience sometimes in our life where the parent becomes the child and the teacher becomes the student. And that was the case for me with the creation of Shared Voices. And the whole of the Denyce Graves Foundation in general. It's a long story. But we were in the pandemic, and I just thought, I felt so badly about some of my young singers who were graduating or had just finished graduating and just a few years out there into the world. And I thought, oh my gosh, all of a sudden everything was just halted. And I wanted to reach out to them to encourage them and to see how they were doing. And there was one student who was really angry with me. And she said, you know, I spent so much money going to the conservatory and 4 years of undergraduate and then 2 years of graduate school, and I've got all the student debt, the student loan, and you encouraged me to do this, and now we're in this uncertain time where nobody knows what's going to happen. And she hung up the phone. And throughout my life, whenever I have faced difficulty, I often ask that circumstance, what are you here to teach me? What should I learn for this? I always say thank you. I don't understand this, I don't know what it means, but show me what I'm supposed to see. I could not get her off of my heart. And I think that we could probably all harken back to experiences where we've had where something appears to be something upsetting, or it comes disguised as a failure, it comes disguised as disappointment, and it turns out to be one of the greatest blessings ever. So that was pressing on my heart, and I just kept thinking, I've got to do something to help my students. So I first engaged them in a lot of the virtual choirs. Remember, everybody was doing that. And I said, this is what we're going to do. So we started doing that. And that was a lot of fun, and that really lifted everybody's spirits. And then I had a student who was singing outside in the snow. This was December 2019, on the steps of what was formerly the National Negro Opera House. And I got in touch with her. I said, what is it that you're doing? She said, there is a little-known person by the name of Mary Cardwell Dawson, and she created the first National Negro Opera Company. And she was standing in front of this old Victorian house, which served as the home of the National Negro Opera Company. And it was dilapidated, falling down, and she was saying, we've got to raise awareness about this. So I got in touch with all of my students, and I said, listen, we're going to do a project. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody's going to sing, and I told them the story, and I said, everybody's going to sing an aria and upload that with the hashtag Save the National Opera House. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but I'd started a cooking show, right? Have you seen it, Cooking with Denyce? So I'd started this cooking show because a lot of times what I would do with my students is I would have them come over to the house. We would have a mock run-through of their recital material, of their audition material, of their that sort of thing. And then after that was over, I'd cook. So we'd do a master class and I'd cook. And so I'd been doing that as well. And so we decided to use that platform because we had over 250,000 viewers for the cooking show. Now, this was a time that everybody was at home, so we started using that platform to talk about the National Opera House, formerly known as the National Negro Opera House. So the students uploaded this aria with the hashtag Save the National Opera House, and people started calling, saying, what are you doing? What is this thing you're doing? What is this thing about the National Negro Opera House that you're doing? I thought I was doing a cooking show, right? I had no idea that it was going to turn into what it ended up turning into. But again, that was an instant, I think, of myself becoming the student and really listening and following the guidance of where I was being called, right? So Francesca Zambello, who's the artistic director of Washington National Opera, got in touch with me. She said, I see all of this that you're doing, and I think we should create an opera around this story. Well, oftentimes in the profession, people come to you with different ideas and suggestions. Sometimes they happen, and oftentimes they don't. But she said, this is an important story, and I love what it is you're doing. We should do something to really bring into rightful prominence this woman. So how do we get from there to shared voices? So the Denyce Graves Foundation sits at the intersection of social justice, American history, and the classical vocal arts. And we started looking at this great woman and others like her who have contributed to our cultural fabric, who created the stage that we have been so fortunate to grace, but was not able to perform on that stage herself. She went to the New England Conservatory. She graduated in 1925. She wanted to become an opera singer. At that time, for an African-American woman, racism really paralyzed any possibility of that to happen. So her response to that was, well, okay, I'll create my own opera house. Who doesn't love that, right? Who doesn't love that? So she created this opera house, and she found hundreds and hundreds. She found 1,800 singers. She found the orchestra, the conductor, the designer, the director, and this was back during the war. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it's difficult to produce opera now and to create an opera company now, but for an African-American woman back in the 30s, 40s to do something like that was no short of heroic. So while she did not have the career that she wanted to have, her calling was actually much greater than that. And she created this amazing opportunity for so many artists to perform. So the piece that we sang was called Poor Me by Nathaniel Dett, that Marian Anderson made famous. And amongst so many of the notables that Marian, this great legend, Marian Anderson, we know that she was the first African American to sing at the Metropolitan Opera. But in fact, Mary Cardwell Dawson brought 500 Black people to the Metropolitan Opera in that same time period. Now, what happened was it was the first time that the Metropolitan Opera had allowed an independent opera company to rent the opera house, so they rented it. And then the other thing that happened is that the union would not allow them to perform standard repertoire. So they performed a piece by the violinist and composer Clarence Cameron White, and they performed a piece called The Wanga. So while we were both are enormous fans of Terence Blanchard, who premiered Fire Shut Up in My Bones 2 seasons at the Metropolitan Opera, the fact of the matter is Clarence Cameron White was the first African American to have a work of his performed at the Metropolitan Opera, right? And so what is it that we do as artists? We tell stories. And what does that mean? That means that we've got to go do research. We've got to look and find out about who is the character, what was going on in that time. And so I think that as singers, we have exercised that muscle to be curious about, we have to know everything about that particular character that we're portraying or what's going on in that piece. So this kind of work was of tremendous excitement. You know, we know that everybody across the globe knows who Mozart is, right? But now what we see happening is that people are discovering Chevalier Saint-Georges, right? Who existed, who lived before Mozart. And what we see uncovering now, this is the work that we're doing with the foundation, is uncovering, celebrating, restoring to rightful prominence those great Americans, those great artists of color, or women composers, LGBTQIA artists who have been left out of the telling of the story. And you know, I didn't learn about Chevalier Saint-Georges in the conservatory. I didn't learn about Mary Cardwell Dawson in the conservatory. I've been able to have the career that I've been able to have because of the work of Mary Cardwell Dawson, who planted those seeds, who nourished that ground that we are so grateful to grace. I realize I still haven't gotten to what Shared Voices is. I know. It's a long story. So Shared Voices really came out of, so we've just launched the other programs. So there are 3 programs that we have: Shared Voices, Hidden Voices, and Generational Voices. So we've just launched a couple days ago Hidden Voices at the Kennedy Center. It was 4 days of events. We created an exhibit that's in the Hall of States at the Kennedy Center. We did the work of the Mary Cardwell Dawson. We had a White House a presentation of the Joseph R. Biden Presidential Award given posthumously to the family of, to Mary Cardwell Dawson through her family, her great-great-grandniece who accepted that, and many different events that we had around the Hidden Voices. Shared Voices came out of this original conversation that I said I had with a student who was saying, you know, it's cost me all of this, it's cost my parents so much, and now I have embarked upon this career and I don't know what's gonna happen. And it was really looking at those gaps of vulnerability. What happens after you leave the conservatory, before you get management, before you start to get work? What happens in that period? So we wanted to really look at that and address that issue and find a way to support young emerging artists in that particular period. Shared Voices is, and I've taught all over the place at conservatories, even though I'm on faculty at Peabody and Juilliard. I've taught for a while, even back in the 90s, Maestro, at different schools of music, at HBCUs and at conservatories. And so listening to the students and listening because, you know, I was saying earlier that part of music making, I mean, I think a great part of it is listening, right? It's listening to each other. It's letting the silence have a presence. And listening to the needs of the students. And so the Shared Voices program is an exchange program between HBCU students of music and conservatory students of music. We know that there's all kinds of learning that happens. We look at HBCUs, which have an incredible history of choirs and glee clubs, and some of the most spectacular voices that we've known in our lifetimes have been products of HBCUs. We look at your godmother, Jessie Norman. We look at the great Leontine Price. We look at Matilda Dobbs. We look at Robert McFerrin, the father of Bobby McFerrin. There's just countless. Today, we can look at Solomon Howard. We can look at Leah Hawkins. And what we see is that a lot of those great artists got their starts at the HBCUs and then went on to conservatory. So it's a way to look at what the HBCUs do well and what the conservatories do well, and get a consortium and a cohort of students together so that they can learn from each other's institutions. So what we've done is we've formed a consortium of different schools,
Fisk and Morehouse and Howard and all of these different schools, and Juilliard and Peabody and Manhattan, and we get a group of students together where they exchange with each other in their environments, and the students have the opportunity to take the best that's taught from each institution. And I'll tell you how we do that. But one of the things that the HBCUs do so well, as we're now in this period of belonging and diversity and inclusion, one of the things that the HBCUs, and I started off by saying that I never learned about Chevalier Saint-Georges. I never learned about Nathaniel Dett, who the Pour Me is about. We never learned about a lot of the great artists in the conservatories. But one of the things that the HBCUs do so well is that they have always incorporated that history into the learning. You know, I say that sometimes when my kids were little and, you know, I wanted to try to get them to eat their vegetables, I'd grind up the broccoli and put it in the pancake mix, right? So that they didn't know what they were having. And so one of the things that the HBCUs do so well is that they incorporate some of the great artists that we are now, that the nations are beginning to learn about. That's always been a part of the curriculum, right? And that's one thing that the conservatories can look at. Conservatories have, in a lot of cases, have a lot of resources or more resources available to them because it is a concentrated atmosphere. A lot of times that students that go to HBCUs don't get a degree in vocal performance, but it may be, you were a student in HBCU.
Yes.
What was your degree?
My degree was in classical piano.
From Howard?
From Howard University.
Oh,
with Dr. Raymond Jackson, who went to Juilliard, who did his dissertation on the music of African-American pianists, which gave me sort of a type of impetus towards highlighting and championing and lifting up the works of African-American composers and creatives.
Exactly, right. So what we've done is we've created this calendar because this got started in COVID, and the idea was that there would be an exchange program where we would have HBCU students go to the conservatory students go to the HBCUs for a period of time to learn from there and to be in that environment. We couldn't do that during the pandemic, so what we did was we created a digital calendar, and each of the schools that are part of the consortium would offer something to that calendar. So if it was Fisk University and there was a choir rehearsal going on or a coaching of some sort going on, we would add that to the calendar. If it were Manhattan School of Music and it was an Italian diction class or a staging for an opera, we would add that to the calendar. So that what happens is that the students who are part of the cohort, if it's Tuesday at 4 o'clock, can look at the calendar and say, what's going on at Fisk? What's going on at Morehouse right now? What's going on at Juilliard right now? What's going on at Peabody Conservatory right now? And they have the opportunity to go in virtually and to sit in on those classes, to sit in on those rehearsals, to sit in on those coachings, that sort of thing. So as things are becoming more relaxed, we're all here together in sharing the same space. We are doing more visitations now with the different schools. One of the things that we're doing is doing immersion weekends where we bring all of the cohort members together. Sometimes it's at my house, sometimes it's in a different space where we work and coach and that sort of thing. And we're having just a magnificent time with it. And the students are learning from each other, you know. It's, you know, I know I can get really long-winded, okay, but I'll tell you this story. I did a CD some years ago, many years ago, with RCA, and they said, Denyce, we want you to do a CD of Spanish repertoire. So, okay, great. And they got together all these wonderful Spanish artists. And so my training in the conservatory is that you get the music and, you know, you work out the rhythms or the language and you prepare that before a concert. Okay, so it was a month before and I was saying, am I gonna get the music? Yeah, don't worry about it. It was 2 weeks before, and I was like, we're recording this, right? Like, yeah. Week before, the night before, I said, well, I don't know what's gonna happen. And they said, Denyce, don't worry. We're gonna get there, and they're gonna teach you the music once you get there. And I said, and we're recording this? I got to the rehearsal studio, and Chucho Valdez said, okay, Denyce, you know, right? I wrote this song, and this is how the song goes. And I said, but what I noticed about that is I was incredibly bent out of shape and twisted in knots and all upside down because we did not approach it the way that I had been taught to learn music. And what I saw from that experience is that there's all kinds of ways to create, right?
Excellent. Good.
I don't necessarily recommend that way, but it was a way, it showed me so much. And you know, we hear that sometimes about, and I think what we're seeing now is that artists have cast a much wider net and are becoming much more flexible. And we see that it used to be that you wouldn't have a classical artist perform a jazz piece with you, or maybe a more popular piece, and now what we're seeing is that the artists are so much more well-rounded, and that in this period of diversity, of equity, of inclusion, that we're seeing that music is music and all music is great, right?
Yes.
And that was an incredible, lesson. So with the Shared Voices program, we're looking at what each institution does well, and we're offering that greatness to all of the different students.
Wow. That is absolutely brilliant and honorable, and it aligns with the mission and the objectives and the impetus of Sphinx. Really, you just helped us connect the dots. This is the SphinxConnect gathering, the conference. It's amazing that the Denyce Graves Foundation is able to create all of these spaces and avenues for people to connect. You said so much, and this came to me. In a room like this, where we have some people who are current students at maybe a high school, a performing arts high school, a university, a conservatory. We have professionals, some who may never win a competition. Some people who may start out playing an instrument and end up becoming a music publisher. Or maybe they are the orchestra librarian. Perhaps they've now moved into media, photography, graphic design. No matter where they lie in the space of the pantheon of musical, artistic creation, what do you say to people who can find themselves in the selection that we performed, sometimes up, sometimes down? Because there are people that are here now who want to achieve and want to be the best that they are and want to find their voice. So it's spaces like this that Sphinx has created for us to be able to do that. But you just gave us all of these avenues that most people would never consider as an artist, because we're trained to perfect our craft, to perfect the music, for a vocalist to know what the aria is, who they are, their character, things like that. But how do we, in this space, find our voice, not just our narrative to tell the story, but how do we find our way? What can you say to the people who may end up dealing with a brick wall, where they're trying over and over? They don't have the instrument, they can't afford the instrument, and so their instrument may not sound as good as someone else's, but they come to environments like this, or maybe they're already out of college and they didn't get an opportunity to experience what the Denyce Graves Foundation is doing. How can you help to empower and lift people like that in this room?
So there's so much to say in response to that, and thank you for the question. When I first started studying voice, the thing that made the greatest impression on me is that these beautiful individuals walk through the door. Everybody has a different kind of Stradivarius, right? And you have to sort of find the key that unlocks their understanding. But before you get to that, you've got a human being. I mean, and voice is so different from voice is the study of the voice is such an intensely personal experience because it's you. You can buy another clarinet, right? All respect, all respect. But you get one set of vocal folds. That's it. That's it. And the responsibility of that is tremendous. It's tremendous. But also, in order to do that work, the emotions have to be available in order to do the work. And you're facing a human being there. So the thing that made the greatest impression on me is that, gosh, this is more about life lessons than voice lessons, right? That's the thing that really hit me. Because you've got to interact and address the human being that's standing in front of you before you can do the work. And that's great. And everybody's layered, everybody's complex, everybody has an incredible history, you know, and you've got a short amount of time with them, and it's an intimate setting, and it takes trust. It takes trust to be able to experiment, to be playful with the instrument, and to trust that that person knows what they're talking about, right? So there's all of that. There's the heaviness of all of that. What I say to my students is that we are going to look at the whole of who we are, and we're also going to have parallel passions. I try to encourage, like, what are the other things that move you? What else moves you? Why do you want to do this? What do you feel like you have to say that's uniquely yours, right? And to start that exploration. And everybody does have something unique. Everybody can sing, you know, Tulo Sai, right? But everybody comes to that with a completely different frame of reference and a completely different, unique gift and beauty that they have. So the first thing that I try to do is to create that discovery in the students, to look at what makes them who they are and what they think they do well and what they think they don't do well, because that's as important as learning what it is that you do well. So I would say that through the life experience, everybody knows here, everybody knows that sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, right? That's how it is. And everybody, you know, we have great moments, and then we have real heartbreaking moments, and those moments are important. You know, those moments are just maybe even more important, the moments that we are down. And you can have that moment, but we want to encourage people to get back up again, but some people don't. And I understand that too, right? So I would say, to answer that question, I tell my students, and I tell everybody, that I believe everybody's path is equally glorious, no matter what you do. Whether, you know, you're singing on the stage of some of the greatest opera houses, or you're singing at your church, or you're singing for yourself, for your own pleasure, just in the shower, or just walking around the house, that's equally as glorious, because you have no idea what your light brings to your particular community. How you might be called to that moment to sing in that church choir. You are needed and called to that moment. And things also happen too. It's one of the things that we're going to address in the generational voices, is that sometimes people start out on a path and something happens. You get sick, or a loved one gets sick, or you discover. I had a student who had a lovely voice, and we were working together for a couple of years, and I just thought, gosh, she's really not making the progress that I would like to see happen. And I was getting really sort of frustrated with the fact that I thought she should be further along. And she was telling me, I've got this band that I'm singing with. And I said, okay, that's great, but now we're gonna look at, whatever it is we're working on. Well, one day, she said, I want you to listen to this recording that I made with my band. It knocked my socks off. She was outstanding. It was one of the most exquisitely gorgeous things I'd ever heard. She was in the wrong lane. That's it. And I was trying to, force her down this one lane, and that's not where her gift was, right? And so I think that that's really important, to look at who's in front of you. But sometimes you need to be in that space to discover that that's not where you're supposed to be. That's as important. Or it's also important to learn the basis of good, healthy vocal technique so that you can bring that capability to another arena, right? It's all important. It's all necessary. And what I would say is that to answer that question is what I would like to offer is for everybody to trust where you are and know that where you are is where you are supposed to be. We fall into so much difficulty and get into a lot of agita and angst because we try to compare ourselves to someone else. And every person has something, some unique beauty, and it's important to really look at that and find out that whatever that thing is that makes you feel alive, whatever that is that makes you feel like, take a look at that. So if that means that sometimes you have to hang out in the conservatory or the HBCU or wherever it is until you discover that and find that, that's fine too. But to know that wherever you are along in your journey, you're supposed to be there. And just be comfortable with that. And don't stop going inward, and don't stop asking yourself what your calling is. And look at what turns you on. I tell my students, I want you to go to rock concerts, bluegrass concerts, gospel concerts, go to the opera, go to watch the master class of a pianist, go to all of it and see what speaks to you. See what isn't you will fall away. But it's important to develop the whole artist. Then you've got something to sing about.
Yes, wow. We welcome your questions live in person at the microphones, but also you can also submit questions through the Hopin app. And we have a great question for you now, and I'd like to ask.
Okay, first of all,
Yes.
there are two things I always lie about. My weight and my age. So if you're gonna ask me that, it's gonna be a lie. All right, okay.
This is an anonymous question.
Uh-oh.
What advice would you give to institutions that are unwilling to diversify their programming?
Well, I mean, I don't know why they would be unwilling to want to do that, because I think that when we look at what makes us great, what makes this country great, it's the contributions of everybody, right? That it's that colorful, rich tapestry that makes us who we are. And I also think that we're in an age right now where if it affects every organization's bottom line to really look at belonging and inclusion and diversity. I would be curious, why there would be resistance where that is concerned. But I would argue that the work that we're doing at the foundation is exactly why. Because so many of these stories have been left out, sometimes you don't even know what you're listening to. You don't even know what it is you're hearing, right? And I think that that speaks directly to, now I'm gonna, oh, here we go. I think it speaks directly to social justice. Now, I'm gonna get myself in. I know that there has been a general consciousness that has caused us to shift our thinking, and I believe we're there. I believe we're there. I do feel like we're in a different period. You know, there was one other, the other time in my life where I felt, well, okay, I'll tell you this one story. When I was, I went to a performing arts high school, to the Duke Ellington School. And I did an exchange, yeah, the Duke Ellington's in the house. I did an exchange program, and I went to live with a German family. I was 15 years old. And I came down one morning, and I heard my German mother on the telephone saying, "We have an American staying with us." And I said, "Oh my goodness." And she said it with such pride. "We have an American student staying with us." And I thought, I am not even an American in America. And here, she spoke of, and I felt the importance of that. We have an American staying with us. And that moment changed me profoundly, because I wasn't relegated or regarded as, you know, this little black girl from the other side of the tracks, like I had felt in America. When 9/11 happened, there was a very important individual that I knew, and I saw the next day, who would never really speak to me. And I saw this individual the next day after everything that happened with 9/11. And he decided to engage me in conversation, and I thought, yeah, because what happened to all of us. And it's in moments like these that we see that we are more alike than unalike. And that's what music has the power to do, for sure. And so what it was that I've been careful about saying is that what makes two men think that a black man jogging owes them an explanation for why he's out jogging? What makes them think that? What makes someone think that if you're walking around in a neighborhood, you're not supposed to be there because I say that it's not okay for you to be there, when, by the way, I'm the one that's got the weapon? Why does that happen? Because there has been a conditioning that's happened to all of us. And the reason that these stories are so important, because the conditioning would have us think that that our lives are less valuable. And I believe that when you see or hear something beautiful, the judgmental mind stops. And you thought it was Mozart, but you didn't know that there was Chevalier Saint-Georges, right? That there was a black composer who composed in that. And I believe it's important to share those accomplishments of all of everybody that helps make the country what it is and helps make the world what it is, because then we will see that we are more alike than unalike. It's because it's been unbalanced. It's been lopsided. We've been taught been told one story, and that's hurt all of us. It's hurt us all. And that, I think, is what has led to a lot of the, and I hate using the word because I don't want to make it seem important, but to a lot of imperial thinking or supreme thinking that these people are better than these people, right? And I think that why is it that we hide those stories? Why didn't we tell those stories in the first place? Why is a great, great woman who is considered to be the first lady of opera? Because if you think of the first lady of opera, you won't think of a little black lady. You don't think that that was her. You might think that, who was the first impresario? You might think it was Sarah Caldwell, or maybe it was Artis Kranick or somebody like that. No, it was this great woman who was back in the 30s and the 40s creating opera and bringing that to the masses, and she was a black lady. And why don't we know about that? Right? I think it's so incredibly, because I think that that is what has damaged us all. It's hurt everybody, right? And I believe it's of the utmost importance that we tell those stories so that we all say, oh, really? I didn't recognize that. Oh, is that so? I didn't know that that composer exists. We're doing it through the lens of music, but it exists all the way around. I know that Misty Copeland is doing the same thing with her foundation where dance is concerned. And we're seeing a rising of those great stories that have been buried or that haven't been told. And I think it's important for the health of the world. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, we have our first live in-person question.
Woo. Hello. You are speaking life into me, and I'm sure every vocalist here, no offense to the instrumentalists. My name is Lori Hicks. Hi, Damien. Hey. My name is Lori Hicks, Dr. Lori Hicks. I am here a part of Sphinx Lead in the house, as well as Exigence Vocal Ensemble. Exigence. And I want to make a statement first and then a question. I just left a 15-year career teaching and leading at HBCUs, and my passion and vision and all that almost killed me. And I believe I have friends who are still at HBCUs, and we are fighting and striving to level the playing field. And I still know that I'm called. I'm trying not to get emotional. I've been crying all night. But I still know that I am called to be able to minister and to be able to give to HBCUs. I'm a product of an HBCU. And what advice would you give to those who may not have the opportunity to participate in what you are doing, but are still in the trenches, trying to create opportunities? I was making costumes for my kids' operas. I was teaching them music. I was arranging the music. I was doing everything, using my own money to be able to provide opportunities, taking them to the operas. And it like I said, I'm not going back there, but we have to be able to provide exposure and experience just so that they can explore and discover their own voices. So what advice would you give to those who are in the trenches trying to level the playing field and provide these opportunities so that we can continue to serve and continue to provide this training?
And thank you so much for that. And that story I have heard as we've been doing this work with Shared Voices and getting to meet so many incredible Herculean, heroes like yourself. They have to do the work of so many. They have to be the diction coach, the French coach, the German coach, the musical coach, to have to take their kids to the opera, spend their own money to show that kind of exposure. We're hearing about that more and more and more and more and more. and you know, what a big, brave heart you have to do that work. And by the way, I'm going to get to what it is that you said, but by the way, it's because, you know, we did an infomercial with some of the leading artists today who had started out in HBCUs, and every one of them said the same thing, and that is that they felt that the HBCU experience was their nourishing ground. It was that they don't think that they would have even been successful in this industry had it not been for the grounding and the confidence and the, you know, having all of the teachers invest in their success that allowed them to walk with confidence and to go on to the next level into a more streamlined profession. So the work that you're doing, all of that you're pouring into them, that does not go unnoticed. That's in their bones. It's in their cellular tissue. That work that you are doing is important work of pouring that kind of love and that kind of dedication. Because one of the things that you're teaching them how to do is how to love and how to care for each other and what love looks like, what care looks like, right? This is what dedication looks like. Just by the example, even though it's wearying, it's fatiguing, it costs so much from you. What you're illustrating is what dedication and devotion looks like. And they will never, ever, ever, ever forget that. Because that's going to be a part of their makeup. That's part of who they are becoming. So that is not work that is wasted and that goes unnoticed, first of all. I would say the first thing that everybody has to do, everybody here, is to find a way to restore and make sure that we take care of ourselves first, right? That has to be. I know we sometimes come from a culture that says, oh, don't be selfish, and I don't think that's, I think we have to change that consciousness and know that in order for us to be able to offer what it is that you offer so much, that you've got to make sure that you're whole and that you take care of yourself first. So the first thing I would say, in whichever way that you feel restored, whatever gives you, you said you're giving me life, whatever it is that gives you life, right, that makes your cup runneth over, make sure that you do that first. That's so important for everybody, because I think we see right now, we also see mental wellness at the forefront of our conversation right now. And that used to be like in the 90s, not something that we talked about so much, right? So that's really, really important. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
You can't do everything, but take care of yourself first. Do what you can do, you know, with the young people that you're doing it with. And they will, I mean, that example, they will pay that also forward in their lives with, you know, people that are coming along. I didn't know Mary Cardwell Dawson. You didn't know Mary Cardwell Dawson. We didn't know anything about her. But somehow we are her children. We are the descendants of that. And we're carrying on that work. And so everything that you're pouring into your young people, that will live on. And you've already done such an incredible service to the world by doing that, you know, with the people that you have. So I would say, yes, take care of yourself and give as much as you're able to give.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Before our next live question, we have an excellent question after that response from an anonymous person online on the Hopin app. And the question is, do you have any advice for students going through difficult times with professors that do not support them or believe in them?
It happens. And I would say, too, that as unpleasant, as hard, as frustrating, as hurtful as that can be, choose not to see it that way. Make a conscious choice to, first of all, say thank you to the soul of that individual. Because sometimes, again, blessings can come disguised. I mean, I had a professor at Oberlin College tell me, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm here because I want to become an opera singer. He said, wouldn't you be better suited singing gospel music or something like that? And I was just like, when I made my debut at the Met, I sent him tickets.
I know, that's right.
Right. So I did do. And I think that you can use every situation. What I want to say to every young person that's here, sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down, right? Those things, everybody's going to have those down moments. Try to see a blessing in that. Prove to yourself and to that person, let that ignite a fire in you to spur you on even with greater passion and greater determination. That's their issue. You have nothing to do with what people think about you. That's none of your business, right? It isn't. I know that, right, it hurts. We all want to be liked. But that's that person's issue. Do not take that on yourself and internalize whatever their sicknesses are. That belongs to them. It has nothing to do with you. But what you can take from that is you say, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. Right? So I think find a way to let those moments of difficulty energize your passion even more. And then bless that person, wish them well. And yeah, that's what I would say.
I think we have time for about 2 or 3 more questions, and we have those people standing at the microphone, and I'll see if I can get in another question from the Hopin app. Yes.
My name is Adiza Jabril, and I just want to thank you, first of all, because your words have been so not only moving, but reaffirming as a vocalist myself. I am the alto section leader with the United States Army Chorus at the United States Army Band. And as a leader and a black and woman leader in a group that has been, up until 2021, historically male, predominantly white, and definitely male. My question is kind of twofold. What is your advice for those of us who have been charged with leading in organizations that are like that are of that persuasion? And what is your advice for those of us who are coming into organizations, because we are now building this treble vocalist coalition, sopranos and altos, in this newly integrated element in the United States Armed Forces? What is your advice for those women who are coming into this element that has this history of being historically white and predominantly white and male? What is your advice for the women who are leading at that level and the women who are coming in after us?
So what I would say is that you are greater and mightier than you think. You are called to this moment on purpose. you particularly were called to this moment. Your strength, your light, your fortitude, all of the things that make you who you are, that all was needed for this moment. So you're supposed to be there where you are right now. I'm often asked, and tonight the word advice has come up a lot. I really don't believe that much in advice. I think that people are going to chart their own path, and what works for one person may not work for the other person. I think it's really important to listen to your own inner guidance. It is our birthright. Everybody has it. And I think that it's important to develop that relationship with that inner voice that says, go to the right, don't go to the left. I don't know about this. It's speaking to us all the time. So I could say what I might do or what somebody else may do, and that may not have anything to do with your sacred contract of why you're here on the earth at this particular time, called to this moment where you're the first. All I know is that you're supposed to be there, right? And there's something great for you in that experience, and great for those who have the opportunity to witness you trailblazing this. So don't be discouraged. Know that this was completely intentional, that you were called to this moment, that you're a great example to so many, and that you're a beautiful, woman king. Right.
Thank you so much.
Our next question.
Hi, I'm Josh Jones. You actually just answered my question, but I would be remiss if I didn't ever think in my lifetime that I would get a chance to tell you this. Thank you so much for saving my life. I would not have been able to get a life-saving cancer surgery if I didn't have a classical music position, and I wouldn't have gotten into classical music if I didn't see a black woman singing to a Muppet when I was a young kid. So, from me and my family, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.
We are all being watched. We are all role models, whether we like to think of ourselves that way or not. Somebody's always watching us. Thank you so much for that testimony. I'm so very, very moved by that. But look at what you're saying that did for the whole body of this space. What a gift that was for everybody here tonight, right? So you already gave us a gift in the telling of that. So everybody, right. Everybody's calling is great, and I just will say that, if you're walking down the street, whatever sort of interactions you have with people on a daily basis, somebody sees that, right? And you have an opportunity to help change the balance of what's going on in this wild and crazy world. All you have to do is turn on the television, right, to see everything that's going on, and to know that music is needed now more than ever. Because it's I'm born and raised in Washington, D.C., and I'm on I'm on the artistic board for the Kennedy Center Honors, and Washington is a very, divided and political town. And then I'm at the Kennedy Center Honors, and somebody next to me is red, and the other person on the other side is blue. But James Taylor comes out and sings Going to Carolina in My Mind, and we're like hugging each other, and it's all kumbaya. And that's the power of what it is that we do has on the world. And so, however you tell your story, however you make music, it's important and you're needed, right? So that is, we need that deposited into this earth to keep us in touch with our humanity. And everybody has a responsibility, whether you make music, everything's music anyway, I think. I mean, everything is music. I think that's a Sesame Street song. But anyway, I just want to say that I want to thank you for that gift and the example that you showed us all right now, that everybody has a way that they can contribute to make this world a better and more beautiful place. We have that opportunity every second. Thank you.
So our final question, we have about 1 minute and 30 seconds for an abbreviated question and response.
Okay. I'm Brianna Garcon. I'm a current engagement liaison here at Sphinx, and I currently study at Eastman School of Music, French Horn Performance, and Arts Leadership. I am the very first Black French hornist to ever graduate from Eastman, and throughout your career, you've created access to so many varieties of music and connecting to people, and I wanted to know how I, as a young and up-and-coming leader, can do so as well.
I think that be watchful. Look with your mind's eye at who you are. Look at the things that turn you on, what excites you, what would you do. Were people looking or not? Were people listening or not? What brings you the greatest joy? Look at that. Those are your indicators of where you're called to be, right? Because like I would sing whether people listened or not. It's true. And I think that it's about going inward and looking at what makes you who you are. And again, listening to that inner voice, developing that relationship with yourself where you can trust your guidance because it's always right. It's always right. And you have something so special and uniquely yours that we've never seen before here. There's not another person in the world who's had your life experience, who's walked every day the experience that you have. You have something so unique to offer that we've never seen before, right? And it's a question of just, I think that particularly where classical music is concerned, it's surrounded around a lot of tradition and convention. And I think that people think that they're supposed to deliver in a certain way. One of the most memorable experiences I had was a student who came in and sang from Nozze di Figaro, Voi che sapete. And she was wearing a ball kept backwards, and she had her jeans down like really low. And she did it in sort of like this hip hop version. It was spectacular. It was spectacular. I've never, ever, ever forgotten that. And so I think that people think that they are not allowed to be who they are. You have to bring who you are to this profession. This next generation of artists, you guys are going to shape this into what it's going to become. But you don't have to take on the facade of what someone else did. No, we are. It was the Metropolitan Opera said not so long ago, we're going to look at telling, what was it that we couldn't get tickets for? We couldn't get tickets to Akhenaten. We couldn't get tickets to Fire Shut Up in My Bones. We couldn't get tickets to The Hours. It's those new stories that people are craving. Traviata's not going to go anywhere, Bohem's not going to go anywhere. But it's so important to see something new and different. And you are new and different. There is no other person like you. So I want to hear what you've got to say, right? So lean into 100% everything that makes you who you are. Don't try to become somebody else or to wear a facade of what you think this profession wants.
Everyone, can you help me give a hearty, thunderous applause to Mrs. Denyce Graves-Montgomery.
Thank you.
Take a seat. Take a seat for a minute. I'd be remiss to sit on this platform and not make this statement. Welcome to SphinxConnect 2023. I'd like for you to look at the logo, and you see the word connect is in red. It would be a travesty for you to be in this space, in this room. The world is here in this room. There are people here that will hire you for the next 60, 70, 80 years. Whatever you need, they have placed a great set of sessions, plenary speakers, bringing conservatories, universities, and people of the like here. It was me, years ago, a struggling artist, trying to find a voice and a platform, and Aaron Dworkin called me on the phone, and I was in tears because I had a real-life situation. My mother was dying of advanced Alzheimer's, and I was trying to figure out how to juggle life and being an artist. But it's because of Sphinx, it's because of Denyce Graves and the Denyce Graves Foundation and this room, this environment, that you can find whatever it is you're called to do. So I want you to go out, meet someone, introduce yourself, make sure at every single session, make sure you're out at just the hallway talking to people. This moment, this environment, this connect will impact your life, not just for 2023, but for eternity. Thank you for coming.
That was beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you so much.